when you get interrupted, when you are focusing, 17 minutes and 23 seconds until you can refocus. I said, so the reason you're feeling stressed is because you can't, like, it's ping, ping, ping all over the place.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question. What has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling. I'm the business psychologist, the author of the 4-Week Vacation and the How to Hire the Best series, as well as the founder of Tap the Potential, where we coach entrepreneurs like you to design sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. Because after all, we believe work supports life, not the other way around. Weekly on the Profit by Design podcast, we bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Profit Designers, the 4-Week Vacation, the entrepreneur's ultimate guide to taking your life back from your business, is now available. Go to 4weekvacation.com, grab a copy of the book, and be sure to follow the steps there to claim your bonuses. When you purchase the book, you are eligible to join me for my upcoming live training, the 4-Week Vacation Better Business, Better Life Jumpstart. Plus, and you'll also get an invitation to an exclusive VIP closed door training with me to identify the true profit potential within your business. Just follow the steps at 4weekvacation.com. And I hope that the 4-Week Vacation book inspires you for what's possible. It's time to take your life back from your business. All right. Well, Lisa, welcome to the Profit by Design podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm super excited.
Yeah, you have such an important topic, and the work that you do with entrepreneurs to help us be more effective and not just busy. I cannot say enough about the value of that work. So I'm really excited to bring you to the Profit by Design podcast. And I know that what you're going to share today is going to help me. It's going to help a lot of entrepreneurs really focus on the business and what I like to call the $10,000 an hour activities. And I know you don't just work with entrepreneurs, you work with their teams too. So that's another interesting slant on things. And I think we need to have everyone on our team focused on the highest and best use of their time. So before we dive in, I just want to introduce you a bit to our audience. This is Lisa Crilley Mallis. She's a time strategist who works with motivated and busy leaders and teams who want to take strategic action instead of being busy all the time. Lisa prides herself on helping clients create customized, real solutions to everyday time management challenges, not just regurgitating the latest trends. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so very much.
All right. So as we dive in, I love to always just start with your beginnings. How did you come to be interested in this topic and really take it on?
By accident. I think most great things happen that way. I started my professional career as a high school math teacher. And then within the first couple of years, realized that wasn't my passion. And so I stayed in education, but moved into administration. And then realize what I like to call my life lesson number one: just because you're good at something doesn't mean that's what you're meant to do. And I was great at my job, but I didn't love it. And I thought, all right, there has to be something more than this. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there had to be something. And as I was having that realization, enough people kept coming to me, asking them to help them with things that were similar. That led me to realize what I like to call my life lesson number two: just because it's easy for you doesn't mean it's easy for everyone, right? I just assumed that because sequencing things and time management and figuring out the path through the chaos was something that I could do instinctively. I just assumed everyone else had that skill set. And I started to realize that as more people came asking me for help, that was not the case. And oh my goodness, I think I can make a business out of this. And then there were a lot of years in between that realization and then like actually making money in a business doing this. But that was the beginning of Impactive Strategies.
I think it's such a profound point because we take for granted our strengths and the things that come easy to us. And we just assume, just like you said, doesn't everybody else? Can't they do this? Why is this so challenging for other people? So what did you notice as you started to notice this was a strength of yours? What are the things that are the easiest to you that others struggle with?
And so I can listen to someone who's very overwhelmed and very frustrated, and they feel like, they're spinning, they're on the hamster wheel, everything's going, and they don't know where to go next, and they don't know what to do. And I can hear all that and then ask a couple questions and then be like, okay, here's your path through. So like I can just take in all that frustration without it staying in me.
That's a big deal.
Right? Like that's a huge thing. Like I can hear it all and then be like, oh, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, and then I can pop it back out in a sentence or two.
That's such clarity for somebody who's in that place of just overwhelm. Yeah. And, I think one of the things that's important for all of us to remember when we are in that place of overwhelm and all that stuff is circling through our head, we don't want to burden other people with it. We think, this is hard for me. If I share it with somebody else, it's going to be hard for them too. And that's not what Lisa is saying. You said it doesn't burden you. Like you can take it in and you're able to ask some questions and get to a path of clarity. And I think that's it's such a gift. And so I would encourage the entrepreneurs and your team members who are listening to this to not be afraid to ask for help when you're in that place of overwhelm, because others can hear you and not be overwhelmed by what you're sharing. And a few good questions can really pull out, like, here's where we need to go. So the last year and a half, 2 years has been really hard for entrepreneurs. I mean, we've pivoted, we've adjusted, we've adapted, and things are just coming at us constantly. So have you noticed any changes in what you're talking with entrepreneurs and their teams about in the last couple of years because of COVID?
Like at the beginning, it was a lot of that tied up in how do I balance my work and my family now that my family's right outside my door?
Right.
Where before, at least there was more of a separation and it was easier. Now, what I'm seeing is that most of my clients their calendars are full again. Like we went to that place where everything dropped off.
Yeah.
Right. And it was a lot of, oh, the world is great. Look, I have all this time. I can learn to bake bread or like whatever it was that people did. That was not me. But like, not everyone, but a lot of my clients went through a period of, oh my gosh, my business has dropped significantly. I have a lot of extra time. Mm-hmm. And then there was that pivoting and all of those things, but still a lot of those things that they would do, those activities, those meetings, those projects, those were still off their plate. And they started to enjoy that space. And then slowly, one by one, they started creeping back in. And that's what I'm seeing now is their plates are full again. And the good is pushing out the great.
Ooh.
And it's hard because they're frustrated. I mean, we're all, I shouldn't say all, I am, and many people I know are, I won't blanket it out there, but like right now it's still an unsettling time.
It is. Yeah.
And so there's that already. And then the fact that they look around, they're like, oh yeah, my calendar's slammed again.
Yeah. And, I have that experience too, because my kids are back doing activities. I'm speaking again, and life has just picked up. And so the other thing that I think is that we are still experiencing burnout. We haven't recovered from all the changes that we've been through and the stress, and things are still unpredictable. We're not quite sure what's around the corner. So when you say the good is pushing out the great, I want to know more about that. What does that mean?
So like if we look at, let's say you have a goal of, increasing business 10%, and you look at the ways that you can do that, there are going to be some activities that are going to be smack dab in front of your ideal client. and smack dab in front of the best people to refer you to your ideal client. And like the ROI on that time invested is going to be awesome. And then there are going to be activities where maybe you feel good going. There may be one or two people in the room who are mostly connected to the target you're looking for. And yeah, you'll get business from there every once in a while. And so those are good. And it's hard to turn those down because you see, oh, I remember 14 months ago, I got a referral from this place, this group, this activity. And then all of a sudden, this great one comes in, and now there's not much room in the calendar. And so you smush things around and you get that one in. So yay, you've got the great in and you've got the good in, but now you've pushed out you. You've pushed out your family. You've pushed out all that other stuff because you said yes to everything else.
Well, and I think that's part of the COVID effect, right? Because when business dropped off, we all kind of went back into, well, what did I do when I started my business?
Right.
You know, like let's go back to some of the basics here and get things going. And so this is something I'm having a huge insight around this because this is what I teach, that what got us here from the startup phase, what created a successful business will not get us there. And that's exactly what you're saying, that if we're saying yes to so many things, we don't have room for the really great things. So what do we do, Lisa?
So one of the things I'm doing with my clients right now is we go through the A.W.E process, A.W.E. So awareness, and then work, and then evaluation. And so in this case, particularly on the awareness side, they dump out everything. They're like, we look at their calendar, we screen share, we look at their calendar, and I say, defend this to me. And I go through, I'm like, defend this to me, defend this to me. We go through everything on their calendar. And, you know, my favorite question to ask is, what goal does this directly support? And I make them defend directly. I'm like, your calendar is sacred. And people and things or appointments, they have to fight their way onto their calendar. They don't just get to be there. So the awareness piece is doing all of that and getting really clear on what the commitments are and what the purpose of those are. And then we move to the W phase, the work phase. And then we just talk about, okay, what can we dump? You know, and how do you pull yourself out gracefully if you can? Like, there are some things you've committed to that you just will do. There are others that you might say, oh, wait, my favorite is there's someone way better for you to do this than me. Let me connect you.
So say that again, because I think everyone needs to learn this phrase in their vocabulary.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost always someone better than you to do that task. I just got a speaking request as we're talking about this. I'm like, oh, look, Lisa, listen to your own words. Like, I just got one and I was so flattered, and I looked at it. It's not what I do. Sure, I could talk on it for 15 minutes, but it's not what I do. There is someone out there who's way better for that.
Yes. And that 15 minutes is not 15 minutes, because if it's not something you typically talk about, it's going to take hours of preparation to deliver something good in 15 minutes. It's much easier to do something not so good in an hour versus something good in 15 minutes.
Oh, exactly. The hardest one is the 15-minute talk.
Right. Because you got to be spot on. So I love that. And I almost hear you saying we have to give ourselves permission to renegotiate our commitment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so that all is happening in the W phase, in the work phase. And then we move over to the evaluation phase in a couple of weeks, and we look back, okay, how are you feeling? Is the stress coming down? Where's the white space in the calendar? You know, is there some? And evaluation is usually where we talk about how do we make sure it doesn't get back to this? Like, what are the structures that we can put into place? Like, for me, I send people to my calendar link to schedule. If you ask me, I'll say yes almost every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's on point. It doesn't matter if I have time. I'll be just like, sure. And then like a week later, I'll be like, why did I do that? I don't want to do that. And then like all of that happens. So now I am trained. It goes right in. Here's my schedule. Here's the link. Find a spot.
Well, and I know for myself, I utilize an executive assistant, Nicole, and it just helps me because number one, she runs my calendar. She knows, all the commitments going on, and she adjusts things. And we use a calendar link as well. Even though with an executive assistant, things get on the calendar. My executive assistant, she's the one who tells people yes or no, but things still get on there because we're still pretty nice people.
Right. I know. Like, oh, look at the calendar. I think, who set this up? And I'll be like, oh, that was you. So
Yeah. So what other strategies, as people are going through the evaluation phase and they're recognizing, okay, it sounds like you're saying, what did you learn here? What are you going to do different? And what structures are you going to put in place? What are some other structures that have been helpful?
So I think one is to schedule in the evaluation into the calendar, because it's so easy to say, okay, it's the A process, awareness, work, evaluation. Well, when you're in the work, you're not thinking about, did it work? Did it not work? And so pop in 15 minutes when you're like, okay, I'm tackling this problem. I know I'm tackling this problem. Just pop in 15 to go back and be able to check it. As far as structural pieces, I try to make it hard for me to do the wrong thing.
Oh, that's good.
So I can schedule on the calendar, I use Google Calendars. I can schedule it myself. That's really easy. So instead, I make myself go in through the scheduler to schedule, because then I'm overriding something that's already been blocked up. By the time I go through all those steps, I've already thought of, 15 squirrels have run past and, I'm somewhere else. And it's like, oh, okay, good. So make it hard to do, I like to say, make it easy to do the right thing or make it hard to do the wrong thing.
Yeah, or both. Combination of the two. Yeah, that's really good. As you're saying that, one of the things that comes to mind for me is I will have big projects that I want to work on, and there will be white space on the calendar, but it's just white space. It never gets designated for these particular projects. And so it's never clear to me what I'm supposed to be working on when. And what works best for me is when we're scheduling. Like when I was actively writing the book, we had book time, writing time. And when I'm practicing for a talk, we have talking time or practice on the calendar. But there's other things that I'm working on that just aren't on the calendar. So you're making me aware as I'm evaluating, as I'm talking to you, to go in and practice this. One of the things that you're really good at is, and it's one of your strengths, is helping people use their own strengths to be more effective. And you do this both for the entrepreneur as well as for the team. So can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah. So I'll give you two examples, because while we're talking about that white space, I know you and I had talked about this earlier. I have a client who is a people person. And so when he had that white space in his calendar, even if he would put in their work on this project, he would squeeze the time or ignore the time. Let's be honest, sometimes he'd flip it out of there because someone needed him right then instead of someone needing him a week in the future or whatever that would look like. And so we changed it to where it was the outcome for the person that he was working for. And so what I mean by that is if he was working on a project for you, he's in finances. So it would be like Sabrina's new house.
Oh.
Because when he gets your project done, you then know, where are you at on getting a new house or whatever that may be? Or if there was a project for a faceless corporation, you know what I mean? Something where it wasn't like that, he would flip it to him, the son's new pool, because the commission from this project would help buy the pool. And so that's how he worked with his strength, because it's people.
Yeah, and to serve. And when he could connect it to, I'm serving this other person, or I'm serving myself, or somebody who matters to me, then I'm going to make the time for it.
Because he was never bumping project time for email. He was bumping, he was bumping project time for people who needed him right then.
So that's part of that evaluation phase, is understanding what are we bumping project time for? How does it get lost? And then you're looking at the strengths of the person to help them. I like that. I like that a lot. So what does this look like when you do this for teams? Because, oh my gosh, when I think about, I'm a pretty productive person, not always, but generally productive. And our team, generally productive, but there's 5 to 7 of us at any given time. So when we magnify our weaknesses with being effective, that's a pretty strong magnification effect. And then if you have a team of 10 or 20, learning how to be more strategic as a team and more effective has a huge impact. And I'm all about profit. So on the profit of the company, that's huge. So talk a little bit about what does this look like on teams?
So there's a company I'm working with, so similar in size to where you're at. I think there's 7 of them. They all work virtually, and they're really effective. Like, they're really efficient. And the owner has her finger on the pulse. And so she's checking in with them, both formally and informally. And in conversation, she's getting back a lot of, I'm feeling really stressed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I'm going to drop the ball.
Yep.
And so in one of our coaching conversations, she brought this up, and I said, well, are they? And she's like, no. She's like, no one is dropping the ball. And I said, okay, well, then let's just have a conversation. Let them all download. She's like, they all want time management training. I was like, okay, like, that's really big. Like, let's see if we can narrow that in a little bit. And so in the course of conversation, what we realized was they were using 7 different communication channels in their company. Slack, Voxer, Trello. Like, they had 7. And those notifications were pinging all day long. So we talked about, all right, look, when you're focused, there's a study by University of California, Irvine that says when you get interrupted, when you are focusing, 17 minutes and 23 seconds until you can refocus. I said, so the reason you're feeling stressed is because you can't, like, it's ping, ping, ping all over the place. So what we started to do then was we're like, okay, who likes which channels? And what we realized was that we could move their communication down into one place for them internally. We could move it all into Slack and text message as an emergency. That way they could manage their notifications on Slack, and know that if they got a text message, they needed to flip their focus. So it seemed like, so the awareness was, here's what's happening. We've got 7 channels. The work piece was, oh, yay, let's just move to Slack. Then we evaluated. Well, guess what? No one sent a memo to their clients. No one said, hey, by the way, we really only like to use Slack, so we want you to only use Slack. And so we hit like the big part, like anxiety went down. They were feeling better. And that's when we got to dig in and look individually at strengths across the room, because any communication coming anywhere other than Slack, they weren't on top of, because they had gotten so used to checking everything and then moved into only worrying about really one thing, that now the stuff was coming in different areas. And so then at that case, so at the beginning, we called it a productivity bottleneck. At the beginning, the bottleneck was just the fact that they were overwhelmed and pinging from so many places that they were inefficient. Then the bottleneck shifted to things actually falling through the cracks because they didn't have a great implementation system. So we were able to go, and at this place, we were able to go person by person and work off strengths and however that would look.
You had to get the anxiety down before you were even able to do that work, because people were so stressed. And we've had this conversation on our team recently about the multiple communication channels. We don't have 7. We've narrowed it down, but we use Voxer a lot and Slack and Asana primarily. And then of course we have email. But we have gotten off of email. When we made the transition from email to Slack a few years ago, it was really hard for people initially, but now it really has made that big difference because you have one central place. But we also had to be aware of not posting project-related stuff in Slack because it needs to be in Asana. And so the discussion was, some people on our team were getting multiple Voxers per day, and it would take them 30 minutes to go through all their Voxer messages, and it pings and whatever, and it's that distraction factor. And so for myself, I have no problem. Like, I don't have email notification on my computer. I don't have, my phone doesn't buzz with every Slack message that comes in, and I just deliberately check it a certain time of day. But I forget to remind our team to work in that way. Like, to me, it's just like, I take it for granted because I've been doing it for a few years now. I just assume everybody else does it, but they don't. And I actually, one of the things that I love is a colleague of mine has a signature line at the bottom of her email that says, my work hours may be different than yours. Do not feel that you need to respond to me as soon as you're receiving my message, because she likes to work late at night and she doesn't expect people to respond. And I really believe, I'm all about work supports life. And I believe we need to take that control and not be just constantly available, because just like what you identified, it is very, very stressful. It adds this background of chaos in our life that we just don't need. And I really don't believe anyone expects any of us to be available at the drop of a hat. And so we teach people how to treat us. And so if we're constantly available and we're constantly responding, we're teaching people, hey, I'm going to drop everything and respond to any message you send me, which is going to have us all over the place.
Yes. And that's one of the pieces. It's funny that you bring that up, because that was one of the pieces as they were deciding, okay, we're only going to do Slack and text message for emergency. Like, we really dug in there around like, what is an emergency? And define and like really laid it out. But also they laid out what are their work hours. They're on, 3 different time zones. Some are working it as a second job, so some of them are literally working at 2 a.m, which is perfectly fine. And is the expectation that everyone else then responds to a message at 2 a.m? And no one wanted to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yep.
And it was easy for me. I'm not personally invested. And so I can say, when do you want to work? When don't you want to work? And I'm okay with whatever your answers are.
That is great. So I also know that you help people identify their burnout zone. And I really want to know about that, because that's such a big topic right now amongst entrepreneurs, because we're all feeling that level of burnout from what we've been through in the last 1.5 to 2 years. So how do we identify our burnout zone?
So one of the things that I look at is I'll have people, so I'm of course, a huge fan of clockwork. So, I'll be like, all right, let's get all your tasks out here. Let's find your QBR, let's do all those things. And, as we go through a version of trim, trash, transfer, we'll do those things. And then, but what we dig into is we use Post-it notes. I'm like, I want you to do a pile of things that you love to do over here. And then I want you to do a pile of things that you're good at. And anything that's in the you're good at pile that's not also over there in the you love to do pile, that's your burnout spot. Because if you're really good at it, but don't love it, why are you doing it?
I remember when I learned this lesson, and I was an intern at the Austin State Hospital when I was working on my PhD in psychology. And I loved doing family therapy. And it meant that I had to come in on the weekends, because we had adolescents in the child and adolescent unit who were from all different areas of Texas. It was a huge catchment area. And so their families would come in on the weekends for family therapy. And so I was doing my regular stuff during the week and doing family therapy on the weekend. And then there was an opportunity to do a rotation on neuropsych. And I remember talking to my supervisor and I said, I just don't know what to do. Everyone says we need to be doing neuropsych and it's the hot new thing. And I have no interest in it. And I said, I love doing this family therapy, but it takes a lot of my time. And my supervisor said, there's going to be things in life that you just say, I'm not going to do this. And you're going to be okay with it because you're going to do what you like. And I just thought, and he just essentially gave me permission to say no. But it's those things that we feel like we should do or that we're good at. And maybe there's no one else immediately obvious to us as to who could do those things. So we think we need to do them. But that you're absolutely right. They wear us down over time and drain our energy.
And the person, when you can identify this as something that I need someone else to do, the person shows up. And I like to say it's magic or it's the universe or it's the whatever. And you have to be able to say, I'm willing not to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And the right person shows up.
Yeah, it's almost, I believe it creates a gap for us, and our brains just don't like gaps. We want to fill the gap. And so we start looking around and we are suddenly aware we no longer want to do it. So now we're looking for somebody and they're going to show up on our radar. We're going to see them.
Right. One of the things we'll do is like, okay, what skill set do you need? Do you need a person for personality or and we go through all of those pieces. And then once you dig in there, like almost always in the conversation is like, oh my gosh, my mom could do that. Or, oh my gosh, my virtual assistant could do that. Or like we talked about, schedule time for evaluation, like schedule time to think.
Yeah, that white space to think is so critical, and it's something that gets squeezed out. It's often the first thing to go. So I really love what you've been sharing with us about how to make sure we have that white space and taking the time to evaluate what we're doing. And one of the things that's really fascinating to me is sometimes the person that we need is right there on our team. Like they're already right there. And just because we've been doing this thing, they've never said they wanted to do it even. But as soon as we declare it, like, no more, we don't want to do this, or this is who we're looking for, all of a sudden that person is there. So Lisa, you have a productivity bottleneck quiz, and I have a feeling that could benefit all of us. So would you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So as we were talking about like that awareness stage, it can be hard to do that to yourself. Like it can be hard to ask yourself those questions, because if it were obvious, you would have already moved past the awareness part and you'd be into the work section. So I designed the quiz in a way that it asks common questions on challenges that most of my clients face with multiple choice answers. And then when you're finished, there's 6 scenarios. And then when you finish, it lays out where your biggest productivity bottleneck is. And so we'll work through the awareness off the quiz, and then that at least leads you down the path of what you can do for the work solutions.
Oh, that's awesome. So how do we get our hands on that?
impactivestrategies.com/free-gift.
Nice. Okay. So we will put that in our show notes too. So that's going to be a great resource. Lisa, say the name of your website again in the URL so people can check you out.
Absolutely. impactivestrategies.com/free-gift.
Okay, awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing incredible awareness and insights for us to just think about being more productive and very practical tips. You've already gotten my wheels turning of some changes I'm going to make starting today, not next week, starting today.
Fantastic.
I appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook community at tapthepotential.com/group. Share your aha moments from today's episode, ask me questions, and join in on the fun with your fellow entrepreneurs on the journey to designing sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. And finally, share today's episode with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this. If you've gotten value from today's show, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you are a repeat listener of the podcast, know that we greatly appreciate you at Tap the Potential. And to that end, I have a request. Please consider leaving us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Our reviews help other entrepreneurs like you to find us. Be a part of our movement to help entrepreneurs take your life back from your business.